Yeah, it is something else. When you talk about the quality of player in the transfer portal, this transfer portal has been around longer than most people realize, but there have been various changes made to it that has made it more functional and more accessible to the player. That's ramped it up here in the last year and a half. Initially, it seemed like a quarterback driven component, mainly because the quarterback's the only position there's only one guy in the field. If you're an offensive lineman and you can't play for your team, and there's 5 starting offensive linemen and probably 2 to 3 other guys that get significant playing time in the rotation, then, then you probably can't play at a like school somewhere else. But at quarterback, you can be stuck behind somebody, and there's only one quarterback on the field. Okay, right. So it was a very quarterback-driven situation, and it was reasonable for a long time to see, okay, that player's a good player, but he's stuck behind him, and he's making a move. Now we see, Jason, to your point, I'm seeing guys in the portal that I don't know why they're in the portal, and I don't know their situations. They could have valid reasons other than football or whatever that are involved. But just based on the football situation, Bo Nix is the starting quarterback at Auburn. That doesn't seem like a bad deal to me. Why? I don't know why he's leaving. Max Johnson is the starting quarterback at LSU. That seems like a pretty good gig. Why is he leaving? Like, more and more I see these guys and I'm like, where's he going? Why?
Yeah, no, I get it. Like, I mean, if you're a Spencer Rattler situation, that's
Sure.
completely understandable. Not a big deal at all. But yeah, I mean, Bo Nix was surprising as well. I mean, both of them. Even Dylan Gabriel was a little bit surprising as well. I mean, I know he was a little bit injured this year, but yeah, no, I think I'm with you, Mark. It's bizarre seeing some of these names that go into the portal from some of these schools when you're the number one guy, or at one of your positions, or at least the no chance that you probably won't be the starter coming in next year. Then absolutely, yeah. So it's a strange situation, but it's a situation where a lot of these teams will benefit from that, no doubt about it. I mean, Texas A&M might be a team that benefits from it in a big way based on how they're recruiting, and it looks like Max Johnson might be going there. So that's yeah, it's a wild world of college football these days for sure.
In the situation you just alluded to, again, I'm not there. I don't know the intricacies. I don't know exactly what the evaluations are, but I'm going by who gets playing time and what's happened at those two schools, LSU and Texas A&M. And I see a situation where Zach Calzada decides to leave Texas A&M. Okay. He lost the job, but it was a very close race with Haynes King in August. He gets in the second or third game of the season because Haynes King gets hurt against Colorado. Calzada finishes the season, has a decent season, not a great season, decent season, 8-4. I'm assuming he's still going to be in competition for the job the next season, but he decides for whatever reason, maybe that he's not guaranteed to be the starter. But I would think, again, it wouldn't be just Haynes King is the guy, because he's not a proven commodity that Calzada would be given a shot, but he decides to move on. Well, Max Johnson steps in. He's going to have to compete with Haynes King for the job as well, and he's leaving LSU, where he was pretty much the starter. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, Mark. Some of these, who knows what some of these kids are thinking. I mean, I'm sure they've got people in their ear telling them, "Oh, okay, yeah, you can. If you can go here, you might not. You may have to compete here, but if you go here, you're going to be able to walk in and be the starter, and you don't have as much pressure." So, yeah, it's weird to understand kind of the thought process of some of these kids when they're thinking about transferring, or just maybe not even wanting to compete.
I know I'm going to say something that's not necessarily popular with a lot of Oklahoma fans based on Spencer Rattler's tenure there, and it's indicated by a ton of comments, but also, and of course, the conversations we've had for the past several months. And also, I put up Christopher's comment about Spencer Rattler. What's he ever done? I'm telling you that Spencer Rattler, what has he ever done? I bet that there are only 10 quarterbacks in the country that are going to be playing in 2022 that have accomplished more than he has at this point, that have won a conference championship, that have thrown 28 touchdown passes in a season,
Right.
those sorts of things. There's only about 10 guys out there that will be playing next season. Number two, he's going to arguably be the best quarterback in the SEC Eastern Division.
Mhm.
Maybe Hendon Hooker's more experienced, maybe a little bit more reliable, but he's not more talented. That is a tremendous pickup for South Carolina.
Oh,
They have
absolutely.
upgraded their quarterback position. They were playing walk-ons and graduate assistants.
And they still somehow got to a bowl game.
Yes, that's how good Shane Beamer might be a really good coach.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that relationship with and Austin Stogner actually had come in
Yes.
there as well from the tight end perspective. But yeah, no, and I think that kind of it shows to the relationship that Rattler has. I think what he needs perfectly put here on the he needs a very strong, solidified offensive line. I think that's the difference that he's not going to, he's not going to be a guy that's going to beat you with his feet, but he has, one of the best arms in the country. He's very, he's very accurate, and so yeah, I think having him go to South Carolina with how they've recruited this year, they've Shane Beamer's got something going there. If they can, solidify that, they have the opportunity to your point, being one of the best teams potentially in that division next year. Maybe not one of the best teams, but maybe getting into the top half of that division this year, as opposed to where they've been traditionally. And this is probably the best. He's probably on paper the best quarterback that they've had there in a long time. Um,
From a talent perspective, he might be the best quarterback they've ever had. I looked at this when he transferred. From a talent perspective, in terms of recruiting rankings and hype and all that, and he's confirmed it to a certain extent. I know he had a disappointing season this year, but he's confirmed it. It's not like he's still Quinn Ewers, has done nothing. And they've had guys like Steven Garcia, Connor Shaw, that were good little college football players. Like Connor Shaw got every ounce of ability out of him, but he was no Spencer Rattler by any stretch. So they've had a lot of guys like that. Jake Bentley, Dylan Thompson were guys that could sling it, but this is like an NFL quarterback, most likely.
mhm. Oh yeah, absolutely. There was some thoughts whether he would transfer, to another school or just enter the NFL draft, especially with this being maybe not the strongest quarterback-led NFL draft. But I mean, I think ultimately he made a good decision. He probably wants to have that, doesn't want to have that taste in his mouth and some of the NFL execs' mouth on just exactly how how he was able to how he played it this year and got replaced. So I think it'll be a good bounce back year for him. And so I think a lot of Oklahoma fans will be South Carolina fans. I think South Carolina fans and whoever is playing USC on any given Saturday.
It's only a question as to whether USC is moved to the top of that list or Texas is still number one and maybe USC is number two now.
Yeah, I think Texas will still probably always be number one, but
Sure.
USC might have jumped Oklahoma State, as that as that.
I have, unlike most of the people in this chat, I have nothing against Texas. I'm neutral on Texas, Oklahoma, etc. Neutral, but just because of some of the arrogance and audacity and some of just the sheer incompetence at that place over the last 10 years, I almost don't want them to improve at all. I would love to see this Texas situation play in the SEC. I want to see
Yeah.
their level of incompetence where they can go out and lose to Kansas. I want to see them play an SEC Western Division type schedule.
Oh yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think that would be funny. Just fun to see. I mean, I think a lot of people here would love to see that, right? But But Texas is doing what they do every single winter. They're doing what they do. They're stockpiling all these kids. So is the big question is um, can Sark do it on the field? Can he? He had about as bad of a first year as you could possibly have at a school like Texas, and so we'll see what happens. I think one thing to note here, I think a lot of people watching this will find this interesting, but looking at the 247 recruiting, specifically talking about USC, Jackson State is ranked 102nd right now with that, obviously with the Travis Hunter kid. USC is ranked 104th. That's just like, I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, taking Riley out of the whole situation, I can't imagine a situation where you have a team like that, like Jackson State, that has out recruited by whatever means necessary, but they have out recruited a blue blood team. So I don't know. He's got his Riley certainly has his hands full next year. I think with what he has, it's truly a build. It's truly a rebuild. It's not necessarily a reload that he's got going on there.
No. Yeah, they've got like pockets of talent on that roster that's really good, but their defense was statistically the worst in the Pac-12. So we flipped Raleek Brown, one of the top running backs in the country. When I checked it yesterday or the day before, that number 104 number also included only 4 hard commits. So he's got a ton of spots to fill. So I don't think it's a bad class. It's just basically not a class
Right.
yet.
Yeah, and you have to assume that they're gonna go deep into the transfer portal here this year. I would assume.
So Jason, I don't know what kind of time you have. I've got about 10 to 15 minutes. There's a question coming in here with Oklahoma having signed 13. Where do we expect that number to land when it's all said and done?
I would assume Oklahoma's probably in the 16 to 17 range. I think could be more. It certainly could be more. I think they have the possibility of signing up to 30 based on the class, based on the size, and obviously it has to do with the number of scholarships that you offer. But with so many of Oklahoma's kids in the current class that are on the current team, I should say, that are either are either declaring for the draft or have already hit the transfer portal. I think Oklahoma has in the 30 range that they could sign. Certainly don't think that they will do that, obviously from a recruiting perspective, but I could see Oklahoma probably anywhere from the 17 to 20 range based on some of these kids, that if they're able to flip them or able to get them in a position where they're comfortable signing in the late signing period.
All right. See a number of questions coming in that deal with topics that we've already hit on. So understand that once the video is completed and we wrap up the live stream, that you can watch it right here at the Voice of College Football. Also, one note here is that we would love to have a sponsor. So if you own a business or you are connected to a business that could possibly benefit from what we do here at the Voice of College Football, we would certainly supply all the numbers regarding the viewership and subscribers and everything that we reach here at our Oklahoma channel. So contact me at MarkRogersTV at Gmail, MarkRogersTV at Gmail, if you would like to sponsor. So Jason, is there anything else out there that you'd like to hit on?
No, not necessarily. I think Oklahoma will probably. We haven't talked a lot about the coaching staff changes. Oklahoma's added a couple of guys. Ted Roof as a defensive coordinator was a little bit of a surprising move. I think from everything that I've heard, he's defensive. He's probably Venables is going to closely be involved in the defensive game plan and probably even calling a lot of the plays. I've heard some things about Ted Roof is really kind of there for player development more so than anything, and even from a recruiting perspective, he's been there. He's been all across the board and kind of ACC, SEC territory, one of the better recruiters. So I think from that prowess, I think he's He's there. Brandon Hall has been added as a safeties coach and a probably a special teams coordinator. So Oklahoma's solidified on the coaching staff as without they still have two spots that they're looking at, a cornerback and a defensive line coach. So there's some thoughts that Mike Reed and Todd Bates could potentially come over. Those are a couple of the names. So I think Oklahoma has been waiting for after National Signing Day has ended, and then there's some thoughts that maybe if they go a different way, some of the guys that could come over may still be coaching in the college football playoff. So there's some things to work out as far as that, but Oklahoma's getting closer to kind of nailing down what that full staff looks like. And then there's a bowl game coming up here pretty soon, so I'm sure we'll talk about that next week and preview that a little bit more for what Oklahoma looks like, particularly on the defensive side, as they've got 4 opt-outs that are not playing um, in the bowl game, just opting out for the NFL draft. So we'll certainly get into that a little bit more next week.
We'll have to run a poll here gauging everyone's interest in the bowl game. I love the bowl games. I just think they provide matchups that we never see, and we get one additional college football game, but we get one additional college football game of a big program taking on a big program, regardless of the level of disappointment for those two teams for that particular season. When you get Oklahoma and Oregon on the same field, and Kentucky and Iowa and Penn State and Arkansas, and these teams that are quality football teams, quality programs, and they're otherwise not going to play. I just think it's exceptional. And even if you've got a number of opt-outs, then you get to see the next wave of players that are going to be meaningful for 2022. Jason, the other thing that comes to mind with this current state of college football and everything that's swirling and changing by the day is that, in looking at a guy like Brent Venables, and I think he's one of many out there. I don't know the man. I'm only going by surface impressions that he seems to be a very solid, faith-based, strong individual that wants to do things the right way. It's almost like I can imagine when somebody nowadays or for decades past gets into politics with every good intention of doing the right things, changing things, wanting to be honest and do the right things, but you get caught into an environment and just a way of doing business where you have to try to measure your own convictions and values versus this is the way things are done and this is the way people succeed in this business, and it's got to be a difficult thing to navigate.
Oh, it really does. I mean, one of the things that Venables was very clear on, one of the big things that he talked about a lot was loyalty, and he felt like, he has been as loyal as any guy out there, doing this based on, how long he stayed at Oklahoma, how long he was at Clemson, and really this was the one job that he really wanted. So yeah, I think loyalty and faith, to your point, is going to be a big part of the culture at Oklahoma moving forward. So I think he talked a lot about he wants specifically from a recruiting perspective, he wants the offer. He wants the offer to mean something. Oklahoma, and a lot of schools have done this as well. But I mean, I think over the last few years under Riley, Oklahoma has done has really done. I don't know if it's a good job or a bad job or just what it is, but they have had tons of offers out there. And so Venables wants to be one of those programs that, if you get an offer from Oklahoma, like it really, really means something. And so maybe a little bit pickier and choosier. And, the evaluation has to be even much better than it has ever been. And so he had talked about, as well as, valuing the personal relationships that he has with his players and with the parents and with the staff and all of that stuff that was not always necessarily there previously. So I think it's going to be a different dynamic, much different culture from that perspective, just day to day, and then the recruiting side as well.